Hello there. Tonight, we are going to step away from the noise of the modern world and retreat into the long, candlelit shadows of the 16th century. We are traveling to a place where silence wasn't just the absence of sound, but a heavy, velvet cloak that draped over the lives of those born to rule. Before we begin our walk through the cold, stone corridors of the Tudor court, I would love it if you took a quiet moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It truly helps these peaceful histories find their way to those who need a sanctuary of rest. And I find myself wondering, where in the world are you joining me from tonight? Is the moon visible through your window, or are you listening to the soft hum of a city falling asleep? Share your moment with me in the comments. I read every single one, and they are the quiet heartbeat of this community. Now, let the weight of the day fall away. Settle deep into your pillows. Let's talk about a young girl, a princess, and the silence that defined her world. Imagine, if you will, the year is 1520. The air inside the palace of Placentia is thick with the scent of beeswax and rushes. The floors are cold, and the walls are covered in heavy tapestries that depict ancient hunts, scenes of frozen movement that watch the inhabitants with unblinking eyes. In the center of this vast, echoing world is a child. Mary. She is the only surviving child of King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. At this moment, she is the jewel of the court. She is the pearl of the world. But even as a pearl, she is encased in a shell of rigid expectation. To be a royal child in the Tudor era was to be a piece on a grand, political chessboard. Her every movement was choreographed. Her every word was measured. Close your eyes and imagine her waking up in a bed draped in heavy damask. The morning light in England is often gray, a soft, muted silver that filters through leaded glass windows. There is no rushing here. Everything moves with the slow, deliberate pace of a clock that has been ticking for centuries. She is dressed by ladies-in-waiting who move like ghosts, their silk skirts whispering against the floor. Shh, shh, shh. There is a particular kind of silence in a palace. It isn't the silence of the woods, it is the silence of secrets. As a young girl, Mary learned to listen to the gaps between the words. She watched her mother, the dignified, pious Catherine, whose face was a mask of Spanish steel and quiet devotion. From her mother, Mary learned that a queen's strength is not in her voice, but in her endurance. Think of the hours she spent at the virginals, her small fingers pressing the keys, producing a thin, metallic melody that floated up toward the high, timbered ceilings. Music was her refuge. In those notes, she didn't have to be a princess, she didn't have to be a bridge between England and Spain. She could simply be. But outside the music room, the world was shifting. The silence was beginning to change. It was no longer the silence of protection, it was becoming the silence of exclusion. Her father, a man whose presence was like a thunderstorm, was growing restless. The hallways of the palace felt narrower. The whispers behind the tapestries grew louder, though she could never quite catch the words. Imagine the young Mary standing by a window, looking out at the Thames River. The water is a dark, churning ribbon. She sees the boats passing by, the common people who live lives of loud, messy freedom. She wonders, perhaps, what it would be like to speak without thinking, to laugh without checking if the king's eyes are watching. By the time she reached her teenage years, the silence became a wall. Her father's quest for a male heir began to tear the world apart. Suddenly, her mother was no longer the queen. And Mary, the pearl of the world, was no longer a princess. Imagine the transition from being the center of the universe to being a shadow in your own home. She was sent away to smaller, damp manor houses. The grand palaces were replaced by drafty rooms where the fire struggled to stay lit. In these places, the silence was cold. It was the silence of abandonment. She was forbidden from seeing her mother. Can you imagine the weight of that? Two women, separated by only a few miles of English countryside, both living in a profound, forced silence, reaching out for each other in their prayers because they were not allowed to reach out with their hands. Mary's early life was a lesson in the art of waiting. Waiting for a letter that might never come. Waiting for a father's love to return, like a sun that had moved behind a permanent cloud. She spent her days reading, her eyes moving over Latin texts and prayer books. The words on the page were her only constant companions. In the Tudor court, information was a currency, and Mary was bankrupt. She was kept in the dark about her own future. Every carriage that arrived in the courtyard brought a flutter of hope, followed by the heavy thud of disappointment. She learned to keep her face as still as a frozen lake. If you show no emotion, no one can use your heart against you. This was the armor she forged in the quiet. Think of the nights she spent in those lonely houses, the wind howling through the cracks in the oak doors. The sound of the wind is a lonely sound, a reminder of the vastness of the world and the smallness of a single life. She would lie under her firs, listening to the owls and the distant bark of a fox. In those moments, she was not a political figure. She was just a girl who missed the sound of her mother's voice. The silence of Mary Tudor's youth was the forge that shaped the queen she would become. It was a time of internalizing, of building a fortress within her own mind. While the world around her was shouting, while her father was breaking old religions and building new ones, Mary sat in the stillness. She held on to her faith like a drowning person holds onto a piece of driftwood. It was the only thing the silence couldn't take away. As we move deeper into this 3-hour journey, remember this young girl in the gray light. The queen history calls Bloody Mary started here, in the quiet, in the heartbreak, in the long, unrecorded hours of a childhood spent waiting for the silence to break. The weight of a crown is heavy, but the weight of a crown that is being pulled away from you is heavier still. Take a deep breath. Feel the stillness of your own room. The air is cool. You are safe. You are far away from the intrigue of the 1500s. But the echoes of Mary's silence still linger in the stones of the palaces she once walked. If you listen closely, past the wind, past the rain, you can almost hear the faint, ghostly sound of a girl playing the virginals, a melody that never quite ends. Rest now, as we prepare to follow the thread of history to our next story. A story of another queen, across the sea, who walked a different path through the midnight mist. For now, just breathe. The world of the Tudors is fading, and the world of sleep is calling. As the echoes of the Tudor court fade into the grey English mist, we cross the restless waters of the English Channel, moving south, through the rugged mountains of France, until we reach the high, wind-swept plains of Castile. Here, the air is different. It is dry, smelling of rosemary, dust, and ancient stone. The sun has long since dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a sky of deep indigo, and a silence that feels older than time itself. Tonight, we find ourselves on a deserted road in the heart of 16th century Spain. It is midnight. The world is asleep, but in the distance, a flickering line of torchlight begins to emerge from the darkness. It moves with a slow, agonizing rhythm. Step, pause, step, pause. This is not a celebration. This is the midnight procession of Queen Joanna, a woman history would call the mad, but whose story is one of a love so profound, it defied the boundaries of the grave. Close your eyes, and feel the chill of the Spanish night. Imagine the sound of the wind whistling through the dry grass, a low, lonely moan that matches the mood of the travelers. At the center of this procession is a heavy, wooden coffin, draped in black velvet. Inside lies Philip the Handsome, Joanna's husband. He has been dead for months, and yet, his queen refuses to let him rest in the cold earth. She believes that the silence of death is only temporary. She is waiting for a miracle, waiting for him to wake up in the stillness of the night. Think of Joanna's face in the torchlight. Her skin is pale, her eyes deep-set and weary, reflecting a grief that has no bottom. She does not look like a queen of the greatest empire on earth. She looks like a ghost haunting her own life. For years, she has traveled like this, only at night. Why? Because she says a widow who has lost the light of her life should never be seen by the sun. The torches hiss and pop as the wind catches the flame. Hiss, crackle, silence. The only other sound is the rhythmic chanting of the monks who follow her, a low, guttural murmur in Latin that rises and falls like the tide. Requiem aeternam, dona eis, Domini. It is a sound designed to lull the soul, to bridge the gap between this world and the next. Imagine the iron-rimmed wheels of the carriage creaking, creak, groan, creak. They move through small villages where the inhabitants pull their shutters tight. They are afraid of the queen who travels with a ghost. They cross themselves in the dark, whispering prayers for the living and the dead. But Joanna does not see them. Her world has narrowed down to the wooden box in front of her, and the memory of a man who was her sun, her moon, and her undoing. To understand this midnight walk, we must understand the weight of Joanna's heart. She was the daughter of the great Isabella and Ferdinand, the monarchs who united Spain. She was born to power, but her heart was born for devotion. When she first met Philip in Flanders, it was as if a spark had lit a fire that could never be extinguished. It was a love that was too bright, too intense for the cold politics of the era. But Philip was a man of the world, a man of many shadows. His infidelities were like small cuts to Joanna's soul. She reacted with a passion that the court called madness. But was it madness? Or was it the reaction of a woman who was told she was a queen, yet found herself a prisoner of her own emotions? Think of the silence in the palaces of Burgos and Valladolid. The long nights Joanna spent watching the door, waiting for a husband who preferred the company of others. The silence of a lonely bedroom is a heavy thing. It echoes with the questions that have no answers. And then, Philip was gone. Fever took him in the prime of his life. And the silence became absolute. Joanna refused to sign the papers of state. She refused to bathe or change her clothes. She simply sat by his body. When the time came to bury him in the royal chapel, she allowed it, for a moment. But then, she had him exhumed. She needed to see him. She needed to know that the silence of the coffin hadn't changed the face she loved. This is where the procession begins. Imagine the smell of incense mixing with the cold night air. They stop at monasteries along the way, but only those for men. Joanna is so protective of her dead husband's memory that she refuses to let any woman, not even a nun, near the coffin. Can you see the scene? A courtyard of a monastery, lit only by the moon. The monks standing in rows, their hoods casting long shadows. And the queen, standing guard over the wood and velvet, her hand resting on the lid as if she could feel a heartbeat through the oak. The silence here is sacred. It is the silence of a vow that was meant to be until death do us part, but Joanna has stretched it further. She has made a pact with the night. In the darkness, the line between life and death becomes blurred. The trees look like frozen giants. The stars are cold, distant witnesses. As you lie there, tucked under your blankets, think about the contrast. You are in a place of rest, of safety. But Joanna is forever moving, forever walking through the shadows. Her journey is a metaphor for the parts of ourselves that refuse to let go. The parts that stay awake when the rest of the world is dreaming. The weight of her crown was nothing compared to the weight of her grief. Her father feared her. Her son, the great Emperor Charles V, would eventually lock her away in a windowless room for the rest of her life. They took her crown. They took her freedom. But they could never take the midnight procession she kept inside her mind. Even when she was finally confined to the fortress of Tordesillas, she lived in a perpetual midnight. She refused to believe the sun was real. She lived for the moments when the house became quiet, when she could hear his voice in the wind rattling the glass. Take a slow, deep breath. Listen to the quiet of your own space. It is a kind silence. It doesn't demand that you walk miles in the dark. It only asks that you let go. The torches of Joanna's procession are dimming now. They are moving further down the road, becoming nothing more than tiny sparks in the vast Spanish night. The sound of the monks chanting is fading, becoming a hum, then a whisper, then nothing. The road is empty again. The rosemary and the dust remain. The stars continue their slow, silent dance across the heavens. Joanna is at peace in our story now. She has reached the end of this night's journey. As we prepare to leave the plains of Spain, we carry a piece of her devotion with us. A reminder that even in the darkest midnight, there is a strange, haunting beauty in the things we choose to remember. Breathe in and out. The air is still. The shadows in your room are soft and protective. You are drifting, moving away from the creaking wheels and the flickering torches. You are moving toward a deeper rest, where the history of the world becomes a soft, distant dream. The flickering torches of Spain have finally burned out, and the cold wind of the Castilian plains has softened into a warm, golden breeze. We are traveling back, further than the Tudors, further than the medieval kings, across the Mediterranean Sea, to the edge of the desert. To a land where the sun is a god, and the river is the breath of life itself. Welcome to the Nile, at the height of the 18th dynasty. Close your eyes, and imagine the heat of the day beginning to fade. The sky is no longer blue, but a bruised purple, streaked with the last orange embers of the setting sun. The water of the Nile is as smooth as dark glass, reflecting the palm trees that stand like silent sentinels along its banks. In the distance, the limestone cliffs of Deir el-Bahari glow with a ghostly radiance. This is where the silence is absolute. A silence of stone and sand and 3,000 years of secrets. In the heart of this ancient stillness, we find a figure sitting on a throne of cedar and gold. At first glance, you see a pharaoh. The ceremonial beard, the heavy, striped Nemes headdress, the muscular stance of a divine ruler. But look closer, in the soft, flickering light of the oil lamps. The eyes are wide and almond-shaped, the jawline is delicate, the hands resting on the knees are elegant and slender. This is Hatshepsut, the woman who wore the mask of a man, not to hide, but to survive. To be a woman in power in the ancient world was to walk a tightrope over an abyss. Hatshepsut didn't just walk it, she built a bridge of stone. Imagine her waking up in the pre-dawn quiet of the palace at Thebes. The air is cool before the desert sun rises. The only sound is the rhythmic slap, slap, slap of the water against the temple walls. Her servants move in total silence, their feet bare on the polished stone floors. They bring her the regalia of a king. Think of the weight of that mask. Not just the physical weight of the gold and the lapis lazuli, but the weight of the deception. Every morning, she had to transform. She had to tuck away the queen, the mother, the woman, and become the living image of Horus. Why? Because the world she lived in only understood the voice of a king. And she had a voice that needed to be heard. She was the daughter of Thutmose I, a man of war. She grew up in the shadow of great monuments, watching the priests perform rituals that had been unchanged for centuries. She learned the language of the gods, the secret hieroglyphs that whispered from the walls. She knew that power was not just about armies, it was about stories. And so, she began to write her own. Close your eyes and imagine the scent of the palace. It is a mixture of blue lotus, heavy frankincense, and the dry, metallic tang of the desert. Hatshepsut's reign was not defined by the roar of chariots or the clash of bronze swords. No. Her reign was a long, deep breath of peace. She focused on the silent labor of building. She sent ships across the great green sea to the land of Punt, bringing back myrrh trees with their roots still encased in baskets of earth. Imagine those ships returning. The sound of the oars dipping into the water, splash, drip, splash. The crew singing low, rhythmic chants as they unload their treasures. Gold, ebony, ivory, and those precious trees. Hatshepsut watched from her balcony, the myrrh trees being planted in the terraces of her great temple. She wanted to create a garden for the gods, a place of green life in the middle of the yellow death of the desert. In the silence of her temple, she spoke to the gods as an equal. She claimed she was the daughter of Ammonius himself, that the god had visited her mother in a cloud of fragrance. This was her shield. If the gods said she was Pharaoh, who were men to argue? But behind the divine mask, there was a human heart. Think of the quiet evenings she spent with Senenmut, her closest advisor, and perhaps her only true friend. They would sit together over scrolls of papyrus, planning monuments that would outlast their names. In those moments, when the heavy headdress was set aside, who was she? Was she lonely in her greatness? To be a pharaoh is to be a god, and a god has no equals. The silence of the throne is the loneliest silence of all. As you drift further toward sleep, imagine walking through her temple at night. The moon is so bright it casts shadows as sharp as a knife. The pillars are like giant stalks of stone papyrus, rising up into the stars. You walk past the statues of her, rows and rows of stone pharaohs with her face, staring eternally into the east. She ruled for over 20 years. A generation of Egyptians grew up knowing only her peace, only her silence. But history has a way of trying to bury what it doesn't understand. After her death, Her name was chiseled off the walls. Her statues were smashed and thrown into pits. Her successor wanted to erase the woman who dared to be a king. For thousands of years, the desert sands covered her. The silence of the tomb became her protector. She was forgotten, a ghost in the king lists. But truth is like the Nile, it eventually rises. Archaeologists found her shattered statues, they pieced together her name, and they found her tiny, fragile mummy in a humble tomb. The mask was gone, but the woman remained. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the warmth of the Egyptian sun in your mind, but let the coolness of the night air settle over your body. You are safe in the present, away from the politics of the Nile. The desert is vast, and the stars are the same ones Hatshepsut looked at from her terrace. Listen to the wind. It carries the dust of empires. It carries the memory of a queen who stood in the light of the sun and called herself a king. Her story is a reminder that even when the world tries to silence you, your work, your stones, your trees will eventually speak for you. The Nile continues to flow, a dark ribbon through the sand. Hush, hush, hush. The temples are quiet now. The priests are gone. The gold has been looted. But the silence that Hatshepsut cultivated, that deep, intellectual survival, still vibrates in the air. You are floating now, like a reed boat on the river. Moving slowly, effortlessly, with the current. The heavy stone pillars are fading into the darkness. The scent of frankincense is drifting away. You are entering a space where names and titles don't matter. Where you are neither king nor queen, but simply a soul at rest. Breathe in the golden dust of history. Breathe out the worries of today. The desert is vast, the night is long, and you have all the time in the world to dream. We leave the sands of Egypt now, moving toward the dark forests of the north, where another queen is waiting in the mist. But for now, stay here in the warmth. Let the silence of the pharaoh be your blanket. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The golden sands of Egypt have begun to cool, and the dry heat of the Nile is being replaced by a damp, heavy chill. We are traveling north, far beyond the edges of the civilized world, to an island of mist and ancient oak trees. Welcome to Roman Britain, in the year 60 AD. Here, the sky is a permanent shade of charcoal, and the air tastes of salt and damp earth. This is a land of shadows, where the line between the forest and the spirit world is as thin as a spider's web. Close your eyes, and hear the sound of the rain. It isn't a storm, just a persistent, rhythmic drizzle, patter, 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 against the thick leaves of the forest. In the heart of this gray world, a woman is standing by a sacred spring. This is Boudica, queen of the Iceni. She does not wear a crown of gold, but a torque of twisted bronze around her neck. Her hair is a shock of fiery tawny orange, cascading down to her waist like a river of embers in the mist. Usually, the forest is a place of deep, meditative silence. But tonight, the silence is different. It is the silence that comes before a landslide. It is heavy with the scent of wet iron and wood smoke. Boudica is a mother. And it is from this quiet, domestic reality that her legend begins. Imagine her in her wooden hall, the fire crackling softly in the center of the room. The smoke curls upward toward the thatched roof, creating a hazy, dreamlike atmosphere. For years, she lived in the quiet spaces of diplomacy. Her husband, Prasutagus, had made a deal with the Roman eagles. He thought he could buy peace with gold. He thought the silence of the Romans could be trusted. But the Romans do not value the silence of others. Think of the moment the peace was shattered. Not with a shout, but with the cold, metallic clinking of Roman armor. They came into her home, into her sanctuary. They took everything. They whipped the queen, and they harmed her daughters. In that moment, the quiet, dignified woman died, and something ancient and primal woke up in the mist. Imagine Boudica retreating into the deepest part of the woods. The ancient oaks stand like giant, gnarled witnesses. She doesn't scream. She doesn't cry. Instead, she listens to the earth. She listens to the blood of her ancestors crying out from the soil. The silence of her grief transforms into a crimson mist, a fog of vengeance that begins to spread from village to village. Close your eyes and feel the vibration of the ground. It's subtle at first, a low hum, the sound of thousands of feet moving in unison over the damp moss. The Iceni are rising. The Trinovants are joining them. They are moving through the forest like a shadow, a silent tide of blue-painted warriors. Their skin is stained with woad, a deep, ghostly blue that makes them look like spirits emerging from the fog. The first target is Camulodunum, the Roman colony. Imagine the Roman soldiers in their stone villas, drinking their imported wine, enjoying the silence of their superiority. They don't hear the forest moving toward them. They don't see the crimson mist rising from the riverbanks. When the attack comes, it is swift and absolute. The silence of the Roman streets is replaced by the roar of flames. Boudica stands in her chariot. The wheels are rimmed with iron, crunching, grinding, over the Roman mosaics. She is not a politician anymore. She is a force of nature. But even in the heat of battle, there is a strange, internal quiet to her. She is focused on one thing, the restoration of honor. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine the long march toward Londinium. The air is thick with the smell of burning thatch and wet wool. Boudica leads her people through the marshlands. The sound of the marshes is a lonely sound, the cry of a heron, the rustle of reeds. She spends her nights by the campfire, watching the sparks fly up into the dark British sky. What does she think about in those quiet hours? Does she think of the peaceful days before the Romans came? Does she think of her daughters' futures? Or is her mind a blank, crimson canvas? The Romans called her a barbarian. But in the silence of the night, she was a woman trying to reclaim a world that was being paved over by stone roads and foreign laws. She represented the wildness of the island, the untamable spirit of the mist. Think of the final battle. The Great Rebellion. The Roman legions are lined up like a wall of iron. Silent. Disciplined. Waiting. Across from them, Boudica's army is a chaotic sea of color and sound. But the Roman silence is a weapon. It is a silence of calculation. When the two worlds collide, the crimson mist becomes a reality. History tells us she lost. That the iron wall of Rome was too strong for the blue-painted warriors of the forest. But did she really lose? Imagine Boudica after the battle. She retreats once more into the heart of the mist. She refuses to be a trophy in a Roman triumph. She refuses to let them take her silence again. She takes a cup of hemlock, or perhaps a secret poison from the sacred herbs of the Druids. She sits beneath a great oak tree, the rain falling softly on her fiery hair. The world becomes quiet again. The sound of the swords fades. The smell of smoke drifts away. She closes her eyes, and the crimson mist clears. She is no longer a warrior. She is no longer a queen. She is just a mother, returning to the earth that she fought so hard to protect. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the coolness of the British rain in your imagination, but let the warmth of your bed keep you grounded. The forests of Britain are still there, the ancient oaks still stand, their roots deep in the soil that holds the secrets of the icy Nye. Listen to the silence of the night. It is the same silence that Boudica sought in the end. A silence of peace. A silence of belonging. You are drifting now, moving away from the chariots and the woad-stained warriors. You are floating in a soft, gray mist, where there are no battles, only the gentle rhythm of the rain. Breathe in the scent of wet earth and ancient wood. Breathe out the tensions of your day. The mist is wrapping around you like a soft, velvet blanket. It is protective. It is calm. We leave the damp forests of Britain now, moving toward the gilded halls of a different era, where another queen is crafting a very different kind of silence. But for now, stay here in the mist. Let the legend of the fiery-haired queen lull you into a deep, dreamless sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The damp, earthy smell of Boudica's forest is slowly drifting away, replaced by the faint, elegant scent of dried lavender and expensive damask. We are stepping out of the mist, and into the corridors of Whitehall Palace. The year is 1580. The air here is still, but it is a heavy, calculated stillness. Welcome to the world of Elizabeth I, the queen who transformed her own life into a masterpiece of solitude. Close your eyes, and imagine a long gallery at midnight. The moonlight streams through the tall, arched windows, casting elongated shadows of the statues across the polished floor. You can hear the distant, muffled sound of a clock ticking, tick, tick, tick. It is a sound that reminds everyone that even for a queen, time is the only thing that cannot be commanded. In the center of this golden world sits Elizabeth. She is surrounded by wealth, by pearls the size of acorns, by gowns so stiff with gold embroidery that they could almost stand on their own. But look closely. Behind the white lead makeup, behind the wig of red curls, is a woman who has spent her entire life inside a cage. A cage made of the finest gold, but a cage nonetheless. To understand Elizabeth, we must understand the silence of her survival. She saw her mother, and Bullen, vanish into the silence of the executioner's sword. She saw her sister, Mary, succumb to the silence of heartbreak and phantom dreams. Elizabeth learned early that for a woman in power, to speak too much was to die. And so, she crafted a weapon. The weapon of the Virgin Queen. Imagine the morning ritual of the Queen's dressing. It is a silent ceremony. Her ladies-in-waiting move like clockwork. They lace her into stays so tight they restrict her breath. They pin her into collars that rise up like a wall around her neck. This is not just fashion. This is armor. Every layer she puts on is a layer that keeps the world away. She is a sun that everyone can look at, but no one can touch. Think of the quiet hours she spent in her study. The scratching of her quill against the parchment, scritch, scritch, scritch. She was a master of the written word. She could speak 5 languages, but she used them all to say as little as possible about her true self. In her letters to foreign kings and suitors, she was a diplomat. In her speeches to Parliament, she was a lion. But in the silence of the night, she was a girl who had seen too many people she loved disappear. Close your eyes and feel the texture of the room. The heavy velvet curtains, the cold silver of the candlesticks, the smooth ivory of her fan. Elizabeth lived in a world of constant observation. Every whisper in the hallway was reported. Every glance from a courtier was analyzed. How do you find peace in a world where everyone is watching you? You create a mask. Her white makeup, the mask of youth, was her fortress. It hid the lines of age, but it also hid the lines of worry. Imagine her sitting by a fire in the winter, the orange light reflecting off the jewels on her fingers. The fire is the only thing that is warm in this room. Outside, the world is shouting for her to marry. Parliament is demanding an heir. Foreign princes are sending portraits and promises of love. But Elizabeth listens to a different silence. She knows that if she says "I do," she loses her "I am." In the Tudor world, a husband was a master. And Elizabeth had decided, in the quietest part of her soul, that she would never have a master. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine a royal progress. The Queen is being carried in a litter through the English countryside. The common people line the roads, cheering, waving, shouting her name. From inside the litter, she sees them through a veil. She smiles. She waves a pale hand. But she is miles away. She is in the golden cage of her own legend. She has sacrificed the warmth of a family for the cold glory of a crown. Think of the nights in the palace when the music has stopped. The lutes are put away. The dancers have gone to bed. Elizabeth lies in her great bed, the four posts rising up like the masts of a ship. The silence here is vast. She thinks of Robert Dudley, the man she might have loved if she hadn't been a queen. She thinks of the conversations they could never have. The life they could never live. The silence of the Virgin Queen was a choice, but it was a heavy one. It was a weapon used to keep England safe, but it wounded the woman who carried it. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the stillness of your own space. You are not watched. You are not a symbol. You are free to be silent in a way Elizabeth never was. Listen to the rhythm of your breathing. It is a soft, natural sound. No one is recording it. No one is interpreting it. You are drifting away from the Whitehall galleries. Away from the stiff lace and the heavy pearls. The golden cage is opening, and you are stepping out into the cool night air of your own dreams. The history of Elizabeth is often told in terms of wars and armadas. But tonight, we remember the silence of her chambers. The quiet strength of a woman who chose a lonely throne over a crowded life. She protected her people by building a wall around her heart. Imagine the palace fading into the dark. The candles are being snuffed out, one by one. Puff, puff, puff. The smoke rises in a thin, gray ribbon, then disappears. The Queen is asleep. Her mask is off. For a few hours, she is just a woman in the dark. Breathe in the scent of old books and fading incense. Breathe out the expectations of the world. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at rest. We leave the golden halls of England now, preparing to cross the vast oceans of the East to a dynasty of silk and secret gardens, where another ruler is waiting in the shadows of a very different palace. But for now, let the image of the red-curled queen fade. Let the gold embroidery turn into soft, gray clouds. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The stiff lace and heavy pearls of the Tudor court are dissolving now, turning into soft, flowing ripples of embroidered silk. We are drifting away from the cold Atlantic winds, traveling east, across the vast, silent deserts of the Silk Road, until we reach the heart of the Tang dynasty. The year is 650 AD. The city is Chang'an. The air here is different. It is thick with the fragrance of blooming peonies, the sweet smoke of sandalwood, and the damp, cool scent of moss-covered pagodas. Welcome to the world of Wu Zetian, the only woman in 3,000 years of Chinese history to call herself emperor. Close your eyes and imagine the forbidden city at dusk. The sky is a deep, bruised plum color, and the curved roofs of the palaces look like the wings of great birds frozen in flight. You can hear the distant, rhythmic sound of a bronze gong, bong, bong, bong. It is a sound that marks the passage of time in a world that feels eternal. Here, power is not a shout. It is a whisper. It is a hidden blade wrapped in the softest silk. In the quietest corner of the inner palace, we find Wu. She is young, a mere concubine of the 5th rank. But her mind is a fortress. She has learned that in this world, silence is a strategist's greatest tool. She watches. She listens. She learns the rhythm of the court, the way a tiger learns the rhythm of the forest before it strikes. To understand Wu, we must understand the silence of her patience. After the old emperor died, she was sent to a Buddhist convent, her head shaved, her silk robes replaced by the rough, gray wool of a nun. Imagine the sound of the wooden fish drum in the temple, tap, 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 marking the hours of meditation. For many, this would be the end of their story. The silence of the convent is the silence of the forgotten. But for Wu, this was the sharpening of the blade. Close your eyes and feel the stillness of that temple. The smell of incense, the flickering of the oil lamps, the low, monotonous chanting of the monks. Wu spent her days in prayer, but her heart was back in the palace. She was waiting for the new emperor, Gaozong, to remember the woman with the almond eyes and the sharp intellect. And he did. Think of her return to the palace. It was not a grand entrance, but a slow, careful infiltration. She was brought back as a lady-in-waiting, a position of service. But Wu knew that service is the ultimate disguise for power. She moved through the hallways like a shadow, her silk skirts making a sound like the turning of a page, swish, swish, swish. In the Tang court, information was more valuable than gold. Wu built a network of whispers. She knew which official was greedy, which general was loyal, and which concubine was afraid. She used this knowledge to weave a web around the emperor. A web made of affection and necessity. Imagine the quiet evenings she spent with Gaozong. The emperor was a man of fragile health and a gentle spirit. He found the business of ruling to be a heavy burden. Wu became his strength. She would sit beside him as he reviewed the state papers, her voice a calm, steady murmur in the night. She didn't demand power. She made herself indispensable to it. As you drift closer to sleep, think about the gardens of the palace. There are ponds filled with lotus flowers, and bridges made of red painted wood. Wu would walk here alone, watching the koi fish move beneath the surface of the water. Like the fish, she stayed beneath the surface. She let the other empresses and concubines fight their loud, messy battles. She waited for them to exhaust themselves. And when she struck, it was with the precision of a master calligrapher. One by one, her rivals disappeared into the silence of exile or the grave. The court was terrified, but they were also mesmerized. She wasn't just a woman, she was a force of nature. When Gaozong died, the silence of the palace became profound. The officials expected a new emperor. They expected a man. But Wu had other plans. She declared herself holy and divine emperor. She took the title of Huangdi, a title reserved only for men. She became the hidden blade that finally revealed its edge to the world. Imagine her sitting on the dragon throne. The room is vast, the pillars are carved with gold dragons that seem to breathe in the flickering light. Thousands of officials are kneeling before her, their foreheads touching the cold stone floor. The silence in that room is the silence of absolute authority. It is a silence she earned through decades of waiting, and watching, and surviving. Think of her reign. History often paints her as a tyrant, but in the quiet records of the common people, her time was one of prosperity. She opened the civil service exams to the poor. She encouraged the arts and the spread of Buddhism. She was a ruler who understood that a stable empire is a quiet empire. As you lie there, tucked into your own sanctuary, think of the discipline of Wu Zetian. The ability to stay silent when you want to scream. The ability to wait for years for the perfect moment. We all have a hidden blade within us, the strength that stays quiet until it is truly needed. Listen to the stillness of your room. It is the same stillness that Wu found in her private chambers, far away from the bowing officials and the golden dragons. She would sit by her window, looking out at the city of Chang'an, the thousands of lanterns twinkling like stars on the ground. In those moments, she was not an emperor. She was just a soul who had conquered the world. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the coolness of the night air, and the warmth of your own rest. The Tang dynasty is fading now. The sound of the bronze gong is getting fainter, bong, bong, until it is just a memory. The scent of peonies is drifting away, replaced by the scent of your own dreams. You are floating now, like a petal on the palace pond. Moving slowly toward the center, where the water is deep and still. The weight of the world is lifting. The weight of history is becoming a soft, rhythmic hum. Wu Zetian has returned to the silence of the earth. Her tomb is marked by a blank stele, a massive stone monument with no inscriptions. Why? Because she said her achievements were too great for words. She chose to let the silence tell her story. Breathe in the ancient wisdom of the East. Breathe out the noise of the modern day. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the silk palaces of China now, crossing the oceans once again, toward the toxic beauty of the French court, where a queen is mixing a very different kind of secret. But for now, stay here in the shadows of the dragon throne. Let the story of the hidden blade guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The golden dragons of the Tang dynasty are dissolving into the mist, and the scent of peonies is being replaced by something sharper, something more complex. It is the smell of old parchment, bitter almonds, and the metallic tang of an alchemist's workshop. We are traveling back to the 16th century, to the heart of the French court, a place of marble floors, velvet shadows, and whispered conspiracies. Welcome to the world of Catherine de' Medici, the Florentine orphan who became the Serpent Queen. Close your eyes and imagine the Louvre Palace at 3 in the morning. The hallways are long and cold, lit only by the dying embers of the wall sconces. You can hear the distant, hollow sound of water dripping from a fountain in the courtyard, drip, drop, drip. In this silence, every breath feels like an intrusion. This is where Catherine felt most at home. In the hours when the world was asleep, and only the secrets remained awake. In the highest tower of the palace, away from the prying eyes of the courtiers, is a small, cluttered room. It is filled with glass vials, dried herbs, and ancient leather-bound books. Here, Catherine sits. She is dressed in the heavy, black mourning clothes she wore for 30 years, a silhouette of darkness against the flickering candlelight. She is not looking at jewels or maps. She is looking at the stars. To understand Catherine, we must understand the silence of the outsider. She came from Italy as a merchant's daughter, a girl with no beauty but immense wealth, thrown into a French court that despised her. She spent years as a shadow in her own home, watching her husband, King Henry II, give his heart to another woman. She didn't scream. She didn't weep in public. She retreated into the silence of observation. She learned that a serpent does not hiss before it strikes. It waits. It whispers. Close your eyes and feel the stillness of her laboratory. The air is thick with the scent of lavender and sulfur. Catherine was a student of the occult, a patron of Nostradamus. She believed that the future was a map written in the movements of the planets. Imagine the sound of her glass stirrers hitting the edge of a beaker, clink, clink, clink. People whispered that she brewed poisons in these vials. The Italian poisoner, they called her. But her real alchemy was the alchemy of survival. Think of the silence of the Black Queen. When her husband died in a freak jousting accident, the silence of her life changed. It was no longer the silence of the ignored, it was the silence of the predator. She became the power behind the throne of her 3 sons. A mother who would do anything, absolutely anything, to keep her family's crown from slipping into the blood-soaked streets of Paris. Imagine the quiet meetings in her private chambers. The heavy oak door is bolted shut. She sits across from a spy, or a cardinal, or a sorcerer. She doesn't speak loudly. Her voice is a low, rhythmic hum, like the sound of a distant hive. She understands that power is not about who has the loudest voice, it is about who knows the most secrets. As you drift closer to sleep, think about the gardens of the Tuileries. Catherine designed them herself. She wanted a place where the architecture of nature could mirror the order she craved in her kingdom. She would walk there at dusk, her black skirts dragging over the gravel, crunch, crunch, crunch. To the courtiers, she was a monster. But to herself, she was a woman trying to hold a crumbling world together with nothing but her will and her whispers. Think of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. The darkest night in French history. While the bells of Saint Germain-l'Auxerrois began to toll, 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 toll. Catherine sat in the Louvre. The silence of the palace was broken by the screams from the streets below. Did she feel regret? Or did she see it as a necessary ingredient in her political alchemy? She believed that a kingdom needed a surgeon, and sometimes, a surgeon must draw blood. The serpent's whisper was not just about malice. It was about the cold, hard logic of a woman who had been left with nothing and clawed her way to everything. In the quiet hours, she would look at the portraits of her children. She lost almost all of them. One by one, the silence of the grave took the people she fought to protect. Imagine her final days. She is old, her body is tired, but her mind is still calculating the stars. The palace is quiet. The whispers have turned into a dull roar of history. She lies in her bed, the same black velvet draping the room. The only sound is her labored breathing and the scratching of a mouse behind the wainscoting. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the coolness of the marble floors in your mind, but let the warmth of your covers protect you. You are not in the path of the Serpent Queen. You are a guest in her story, safely tucked away in the future. Listen to the stillness of your own room. It is a clean silence. It holds no poisons, no secret letters, no planetary alignments. You are drifting away from the towers of the Louvre, away from the smell of sulfur and the rustle of black silk. The whispers of the Medici are fading into the night. You are floating now, like a drop of ink in a glass of water. Spreading, slowing, becoming one with the dark. The weight of Catherine's crown is gone. The weight of her grief is gone. There is only the rhythm of the night. Catherine de' Medici was buried in the Basilica of Saint Denis, but her spirit remains in the shadows of every palace hallway. A reminder that power is often a quiet, lonely art. She was the serpent who kept the garden, and in the end, the garden outlasted the serpent. Breathe in the scent of ancient stone and old wisdom. Breathe out the complexities of your own life. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the toxic beauty of France now, moving toward the cold, damp cells of a Scottish prison, where another queen is writing her final words in the dark. But for now, stay here in the velvet shadows. Let the whisper of the serpent guide you into a deep, motionless. The sharp, metallic scent of Catherine's alchemy is fading, turning into something softer, something more melancholy. It is the smell of damp stone, old wool, and the faint, sweet aroma of ink drying on parchment. We are traveling to the north of England, to the year 1586. The location is Fotheringhay Castle. Here, the walls are thick, the windows are narrow slits, and the silence is a heavy, physical presence that settles into the very marrow of your bones. Welcome to the final sanctuary, and the final prison, of Mary Stuart. The woman who was born a queen, lived as a fugitive, and will die as a martyr. Close your eyes, and imagine a small, dimly lit room at the top of a spiral stone staircase. The only light comes from a single, stuttering candle, its flame dancing in the drafts that sneak through the cracks in the masonry. You can hear the distant, rhythmic sound of a guard's boots on the flagstones below, clomp, clomp, clomp. It is a sound that marks the boundaries of her world. In this room, Mary sits. She is no longer the vibrant beauty who once graced the courts of France. Her joints ache from the dampness, her hair is gray beneath her cap, but her spirit remains as sharp as the nib of her pen. To understand Mary, we must understand the silence of the long wait. She has been a prisoner in England for 19 years. 19 years of watching the seasons change through iron bars. 19 years of hearing the world move on without her. She didn't spend these years in idleness. She spent them in a quiet, feverish battle of words. She learned that when your body is confined, your mind must become a traveler. And her letters were her vessels. Close your eyes and feel the texture of her world. The scratch of the quill against the rough paper, scritch, scritch, scritch. This is the only voice she has left. Every letter she writes is a thread she is spinning, trying to weave a net that will catch her freedom. She writes to her cousin, Elizabeth, she writes to the King of France, she writes to the Pope, and she writes to the secret agents who promise her a way out. Think of the silence of a secret. Mary is part of the Babington plot. She is communicating through beer barrels. Imagine the quiet, late-night exchanges in the cellar of the castle. A cork is removed, a tiny, silk-wrapped cylinder of paper is pulled from a hollowed-out bung. The silence of these moments is electric. It is the silence of high-stakes gambling, where the prize is a crown and the penalty is the axe. Mary reads these secret messages by the light of her dying fire, her heart racing in the stillness. But what she doesn't know, what the silence hides from her, is that every word she writes is being intercepted. Sir Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's spymaster, is watching her from the shadows. He is the silent observer of her every thought. Imagine him in his office in London, unsealing her letters, deciphering her codes, and then resealing them so she never suspects a thing. Mary thinks she is whispering to allies, but she is actually shouting to her executioner. As you drift closer to sleep, think about the daily rhythm of her confinement. She spends hours embroidering. The needle goes in and out, stitch, stitch, stitch. She creates elaborate scenes of birds and flowers on silk. It is a meditative, repetitive action. It is the only way to keep the madness of the silence at bay. Every stitch is a minute gone. Every minute is a step closer to the end of her story. Think of the cold nights in Fotheringhay. Mary lies in her bed, the heavy tapestries draped over her to keep out the chill. She listens to the wind howling across the English moors. It is a sound that reminds her of the rugged hills of Scotland, the home she will never see again. In the dark, she speaks to the ghosts of her past. To her father, who died when she was 6 days old. To her 3 husbands, whose lives were consumed by the chaos that followed her. The silence of the cell is not empty. It is filled with the voices of everyone she has ever lost. Imagine the day the silence finally breaks. It is the morning of February 8th, 1587. There is a knock on the heavy oak door. Knock, knock, knock. It is the sound of the inevitable. The warrants have been signed. The game of letters is over. Mary receives the news with a terrifying, serene quiet. She has spent 19 years preparing for this moment. She has practiced her silence. Close your eyes and imagine her walking toward the great hall. She is dressed in black, but beneath it, she wears a dress of brilliant, crimson red. The color of martyrdom. The hall is packed with people, yet it is as quiet as a tomb. The only sound is the rustle of her silk petticoats and the muffled sobbing of her ladies-in-waiting. She climbs the scaffold with a steady step. She forgives the executioner in a whisper. The silence of the final moment is absolute. The world stops breathing. And then, the heavy thud of the blade. But even in death, Mary's pen has the last word. Her letters survived. Her story survived. The silence of the cell could not contain her. Her son, James, would eventually sit on the throne of both Scotland and England, uniting the kingdoms she could never hold. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the coolness of the night air in your own room. You are not in a cell. You are free. The walls around you are not made of stone, but of the soft fabric of your own home. Listen to the stillness. It is a gift. It is a silence that allows you to rest, to heal, to dream. You are drifting away from the damp castles of the north, away from the smell of ink and the sound of scratching quills. The tragedy of Mary Stuart is fading into the mist of history. You are floating now, like a feather falling in a quiet room, drifting down, down, toward a deep, dreamless sleep. The weight of the crown of Scots is gone. The weight of the 19 years of waiting is gone. There is only the rhythm of your own heart. Mary, Queen of Scots, was buried first at Peterborough, and then moved to Westminster Abbey, where she lies just a few feet away from Elizabeth. In death, the two rivals finally share the same eternal silence. A silence that no letter can ever break. Breathe in the scent of history and the peace of the present. Breathe out the stresses of your day. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the cold prisons of England now, traveling back in time to the dust and blood of the Roman Colosseum, where a mother is fighting a very different kind of battle. But for now, stay here in the quiet. Let the story of the letter in the cell guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The smell of damp stone and old ink from Mary's cell is evaporating now, replaced by something much heavier, much more intoxicating. It is the scent of sun-drenched marble, spilled wine, and the sharp, metallic tang of Roman bronze. We are traveling back 2,000 years, to the heart of the Roman Empire, to a world of white togas, blood-stained sand, and absolute, unchecked power. Welcome to the world of Agrippina the Younger, the sister, wife, and mother of emperors. The woman who believed that the only way to protect her son was to poison the world around him. Close your eyes and imagine the Palatine Hill at midnight. The Roman moon is a bright, silver coin hanging over the Tiber River. The city of 1,000,000 souls is finally quiet, but inside the imperial palace, the air is thick with tension. You can hear the distant, rhythmic chirping of cicadas in the olive groves, chirp, chirp, chirp. And the soft, steady footsteps of the Praetorian Guard patrolling the peristyle. In these shadows, Agrippina is awake. She is always awake. In her private chambers, lit by a single, bronze oil lamp, she sits by a table covered in small, obsidian vials. She moves them like pieces on a game board. One vial contains hemlock. Another, belladonna. A third, just honey and wine. For Agrippina, motherhood was not a soft embrace. It was a tactical mission. Her son, Nero, the boy with the golden curls and the uncertain heart, was her only masterpiece. And she was determined to see him sit on the throne of the world, even if she had to pave his way with the bodies of her enemies. To understand Agrippina, we must understand the silence of a survivor. She grew up in a family where silence meant safety and speech meant execution. She saw her mother starve to death in exile. She saw her brothers murdered. She learned early that in Rome, you are either the predator or the prey. And so, she chose the path of the serpent. Close your eyes and feel the texture of the Roman palace. The smoothness of the mosaic floors beneath your feet, the coolness of the marble columns, the heavy, floral scent of lilies in the courtyard. Agrippina moved through these halls with the grace of a panther. She didn't shout. She didn't demand. She whispered. She whispered into the ear of her uncle, the Emperor Claudius, until he married her. She whispered until he disinherited his own son. Britannicus, in favor of her Nero. Think of the silence of a fatal meal. Imagine a summer evening, a banquet table laden with exotic fruits and oysters. Claudius is hungry. Agrippina offers him a dish of mushrooms, his favorite. The room is quiet, only the sound of a distant flute playing. Trill, trill, silence. Claudius eats. And the silence that follows is the silence of an empire changing hands. Some say it was a poisoned feather, some say the mushrooms themselves were the weapon. But the result was the same. The old emperor was gone, and the era of Nero had begun. As you drift closer to sleep, think about the early days of Nero's reign. Agrippina was everywhere. She sat behind a curtain during Senate meetings, listening to every word. She appeared on the coins, her face right next to her son's. She was the shadow behind the throne, the silent architect of his power. But power is a toxic thing. It changes the person who holds it, and it poisons the person who gave it. Nero grew tired of the whispers. He grew tired of the mother who reminded him that he owed her everything. The silence between them began to grow. No longer the silence of conspiracy, but the silence of resentment. Imagine the nights Agrippina spent in her villa by the sea. The sound of the Mediterranean waves hitting the rocks, crash, hiss, crash. She knew her son was plotting against her. She had taught him too well. She survived an elaborate attempt to drown her in a collapsing boat. She swam through the dark, cold water, silent, determined, until she reached the shore. She went back to her villa, wrapped herself in a dry robe, and waited. The final silence of Agrippina is the most haunting of all. It is the middle of the night. The soldiers arrive at her door. They don't need a warrant. They don't need a reason. Agrippina sees them coming. She doesn't run. She doesn't beg. She stands in the center of her room, the moonlight falling across her face. When the swords are drawn, she makes a final, defiant gesture. She points to her womb, the place where Nero was carried, and tells them to strike there. The silence that followed her death was the silence of a Rome that had lost its moral compass. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the coolness of the night air in your own room. You are far away from the daggers of the Praetorians. You are far away from the toxic banquets of the Palatine Hill. The Roman Empire is a ghost now, a series of broken columns and dusty roads. Listen to the stillness. It is a safe stillness. It holds no secrets, no poisons, no betrayals. You are drifting away from the marble palaces, away from the scent of lilies and the sound of cicadas. The tragedy of the mother who gave too much is fading into the mist of time. You are floating now, like a leaf on the Tiber, moving slowly toward the sea. The water is dark and calm. The weight of the world is lifting. Nero's reign would eventually end in chaos, but tonight, we only remember the quiet before the storm. The quiet of a woman who built a throne out of shadows, only to be consumed by them. Agrippina was buried in a modest tomb, near the road to Misenum. No grand monuments. No divine honors. Just the silence of the earth. Breathe in the ancient dust of history. Breathe out the tensions of your day. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the blood-stained marble of Rome now, traveling toward the medieval forests of France, where another queen is sharpening her wit for a cold, calculated revenge. But for now, stay here in the moonlight of the Mediterranean. Let the story of the toxic throne guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. The intoxicating scent of Roman lilies and poisoned wine is drifting away, replaced by the sharp, metallic tang of a winter morning in the 14th century. We are traveling to a world of gray stone cathedrals, flickering hearth fires, and the iron-cold silence of a castle at war. Welcome to the world of Isabella of France. A woman born to be a pawn, who chose instead to become the hunter. They called her the she-wolf, but that name was earned in the long, lonely hours of her silence. Close your eyes, and imagine the English coast at dawn. The waves are crashing against the chalk cliffs, hiss, roar, hiss. The mist is so thick you can barely see the masts of the ships anchored in the bay. This is where Isabella's hunt begins. Not with a battle cry, but with a quiet, steady resolve that has been burning for 20 years. She has returned from France, not as a submissive wife, but as a leader of an army, and a woman who has finally found her voice in the darkness. To understand Isabella, we must understand the silence of the ignored. She was the daughter of Philip the Fair, the King of France. She was married at 12 to Edward II of England, a man whose heart was always somewhere else. Imagine a young girl in a foreign court, surrounded by people who spoke a different language, and a husband who ignored her in favor of his favorites. She spent her youth in the shadows of the throne, watching as her husband's lovers were showered with the jewels and lands that should have been hers. She didn't complain. She didn't cause a scene in the banquet hall. Instead, she mastered the art of the long watch. She learned that a hunter does not run after the prey. A hunter waits for the prey to become overconfident. Close your eyes and feel the texture of her world. The coldness of the stone walls in the Tower of London, the scratch of wool against her skin, the smell of damp rushes on the floor. Isabella moved through the court like a phantom. She was the fair queen, the graceful mother of the future king. But behind that grace, she was counting every insult. Every moment of neglect was a stone she added to the fortress she was building in her mind. Think of the silence of a calculated betrayal. Imagine the year 1325. Isabella is sent to France on a diplomatic mission, to negotiate with her brother. It was supposed to be a short trip. But once she stepped onto the soil of her homeland, the silence changed. It was no longer the silence of the prisoner, it was the silence of the strategist. She refused to return to England. She publicly declared that she would not live with a husband who put his favorites above his queen. In the quiet chambers of the French court, she met Roger Mortimer, an exiled English lord. Together, they began to plan the hunt. Imagine them leaning over a map by the light of a single candle. The only sound is the rustle of the parchment, crinkle, crinkle, and the low murmur of their voices as they plotted the invasion of England. This was not just a political coup. This was Isabella's cold revenge. As you drift closer to sleep, think about the journey across the sea. The boats move silently through the night. The soldiers are quiet, their armor wrapped in cloth to prevent the clinking of metal. Isabella stands at the bow of the lead ship, her cloak billowing in the cold wind. She is looking toward the English shore, not as a victim, but as the she-wolf who has found the scent. The invasion was almost silent. The people of England were tired of Edward's weak rule. They opened their gates. They lowered their banners. Isabella marched into London, and the silence that greeted her was the silence of a country waiting for a change. Think of the capture of Edward II. The man who had ignored her for 2 decades was now a prisoner in his own kingdom. History whispers of a dark and terrible end for him in the dungeons of Berkeley Castle. The silence of those dungeons is a heavy, suffocating thing. Some say the screams could be heard for miles, but in the official records, there was only silence. A silence that Isabella herself commanded. Isabella ruled as regent for her young son for 4 years. She sat on the throne she had won through patience and pain. But the hunt was not over. Eventually, her own son, Edward III, would rise up against her. He would arrest Mortimer and send his mother into a comfortable, but forced, retirement. The final years of the she-wolf were spent in the quiet of Castle Rising. Imagine her there, an old woman now, walking through the gardens she planted herself. The sound of the wind in the trees is her only companion. She is no longer the predator. She is no longer the prey. She is a woman who has lived a dozen lives in one. She became a member of the Third Order of St. Francis. She wore the simple habit of a nun. The silence of her final days was a silence of reflection. Did she regret the blood? Did she regret the coldness of her revenge? Or did she look at the moon and remember the night she sailed across the channel, and feel a quiet sense of peace that she had finally taken control of her own story? Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the stillness of your own room. You are not in a drafty castle. You are not part of an invasion. The Middle Ages are a tapestry of history now, beautiful but distant. Listen to the quiet. It is a restful quiet. It holds no cold revenge, no ancient hunts. You are drifting away from the chalk cliffs of England. Away from the sound of the waves and the smell of the damp earth. The legend of the she-wolf is fading into the night. You are floating now, like a cloud over the English moors. Moving slowly, peacefully, through the dark. The weight of the medieval crown is gone. The weight of the long wait is gone. There is only the soft rhythm of your own breath. Isabella of France was buried in the Greyfriars Church in London, and legend says she was buried with the heart of her husband, Edward, resting on her breast. A final, silent, and complicated gesture of a love that turned into a hunt. Breathe in the cool air of the past. Breathe out the tensions of your present. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the cold castles of England now, traveling back to the intellectual gardens of the 12th century, where a queen of 2 nations is weaving a very different kind of power. But for now, stay here in the mist. Let the story of the she-wolf's hunt guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The cold, calculated vengeance of Isabella is drifting away now, carried off by a warm, southern breeze that smells of sun-drenched vineyards and wild thyme. We are traveling back further into the 12th century, to the golden lands of Aquitaine, in the south of France. Here, the air is not heavy with iron, but light with the sound of lutes and the soft cadence of troubadour poetry. Welcome to the world of Eleanor of Aquitaine. A woman who did not need a sword to conquer half of Europe, for she possessed a mind that could weave the destinies of kings like fine silk on a loom. Close your eyes, and imagine a vast, medieval library in a sunlit castle. Outside, the world is chaotic, but inside these stone walls, there is a profound, intellectual stillness. You can hear the rhythmic scratching of a quill against vellum, scritch, scritch, scritch. This is the sound of Eleanor at work. She is not just a queen, she is a grandmaster of the political chessboard. Here, silence is not emptiness, it is the space where her next move is born. To understand Eleanor, we must understand the silence of the strategist. She was born the Duchess of Aquitaine, the wealthiest heiress in the world. When she married King Louis VII of France, she brought with her a territory larger than the king's own lands. Imagine the young Eleanor in the cold, grey palaces of Paris. The court was rigid and pious, but she brought with her the warmth of the South, the art, the music, and a quiet, unyielding spirit. She learned early that a queen's power is often found in the things she does not say. Let your body sink deeper into your bed. Feel the stillness of that ancient palace. Eleanor's life was a long, slow journey across the map of the known world. She even joined the Second Crusade, riding at the head of her own knights. Imagine the quiet nights in the desert, sitting outside her silk tent, watching the stars over the Levant. Even amidst the dust of travel and the noise of camp life, she maintained an internal sanctuary. She knew that when the world is shouting, the one who remains silent and observes is the one who truly leads. Keep your eyes closed, and listen to the sound of the loom. Eleanor did not just weave tapestries, she wove dynasties. When she realized her marriage to Louis was a cage for her ambitions, she orchestrated a quiet, legal exit. No scandal, no shouting, just a masterful use of diplomacy and the silence of the law. And within weeks, she had married Henry Plantagenet, the future King of England. In a single stroke, she shifted the power of Europe. That was the first major thread in her grand design. Think of the quiet nights she spent in the palaces of London and Windsor. The fire in the hearth is crackling softly, casting long, dancing shadows against the heavy tapestries. She became the mother of 10 children, 2 of whom would become kings of England, Richard the Lionheart and John. She did not just raise them, she whispered the secrets of power into their ears. She taught them that the crown is not just gold, it is a responsibility of the mind. But even weavers face tangles. When her husband, Henry, imprisoned her for 15 long years after she supported their son's rebellion, Eleanor did not break. Imagine the silence of her confinement in Salisbury and Winchester. 15 years is a long time to be quiet. But she used that silence as a forge. She became the eagle of the broken covenant. The guards would pass her door and see an aging woman in prayer, but they did not know that behind her closed eyes, she was still moving the pieces of Europe. Slow your breathing now. Feel the immense patience of Eleanor. When Henry finally died, and her favorite son, Richard, took the throne, Eleanor emerged from the silence like a winter sun. She was in her late 60s, an ancient age for that time, but her mind was as sharp as a falcon's gaze. She traveled across the Alps in the middle of winter to secure Richard's marriage. Imagine the silence of the mountain passes, the sound of the horses' hoofs muffled by the deep snow, thump, thump, thump. Even in the biting cold, she was the diplomat, the weaver, the glue holding a fragile empire together. Eleanor was an artist of timing. She knew when to retreat and when to demand. She spent her final years in the quiet cloisters of Fontevraud Abbey. Here, the only sound was the low, rhythmic chanting of the nuns, and the rustle of their robes against the stone. Imagine Eleanor walking through those arched hallways, her footsteps light, her hands folded. She no longer wore the heavy crown of England or France. She wore the silence of a woman who had finished her work. She knew that her design was complete. She had woven two nations together in a way that would define history for centuries. When she finally closed her eyes, she took with her the secrets of 100 treaties and 1,000 whispers. Feel the silence of your own room. It is a safe silence. The political webs of the 12th century have long since faded. Only the peaceful echo of her story remains. You are standing in the gardens of Fontevraud now. The breeze is cool, the leaves are whispering in the trees. You are drifting deeper into the folds of sleep. The grand design of Eleanor of Aquitaine is now a beautiful, ancient pattern in the fabric of time. Her intelligence, her endurance, her quiet strength, they all settle over you like a warm blanket. Your body is becoming light, floating on the current of history. The mother of kings, the Duchess of the Sun. Eleanor is at rest. And so can you be. The night is deepening. The world is falling away. Your mind is at peace in the library of an old castle, where the only thing that matters is the soft glow of the moon. Breathe in the ancient scent of parchment and peace. Breathe out the worries of the modern world. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at rest. We leave the sunlit lands of Aquitaine now, preparing to move toward the glittering halls of Versailles, where a fragile angel is about to face a very different kind of silence. The golden, rolling hills of Aquitaine are fading into a soft, white mist, and the smell of wild thyme is being replaced by the intoxicating, heavy scent of roses and powdered wigs. We are traveling to the year 1774. To the most magnificent palace the world has ever known. Versailles. Here, the silence is not a natural thing. It is a polished, expensive silence, kept alive by thousands of servants moving on tiptoe through galleries of mirrors and gold leaf. Welcome to the world of Marie Antoinette, the Archduchess from Austria who was brought here as a child to be a symbol, and who lived her life as a fragile angel in a gilded cage. Close your eyes, and imagine the Hall of Mirrors at midnight. The moonlight reflects off the hundreds of glass panes, creating a world of infinite silver corridors that seem to lead nowhere. You can hear the distant, rhythmic ticking of a clock, tick, 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 and the faint, ghostly rustle of silk against marble. In this vastness, we find Marie. She is not a queen in this moment. She is a girl who feels like a ghost in her own home. To understand Marie, we must understand the silence of the outsider. She was only 14 when she left the warmth of Vienna for the cold, rigid etiquette of France. Imagine the young girl being stripped of her Austrian clothes at the border, losing her name, her language, and her childhood in a single day. She was thrown into a court where every movement was a performance, where even the way she put on her stockings was a public event. She learned that in Versailles, the walls have ears, and the mirrors have eyes. Let your body settle into the quiet of the night. Feel the stillness of the palace. Marie's life was a long attempt to find a corner of the world where she could simply breathe. This is why she loved the Petit Trianon, her private retreat. Imagine her walking there at dusk, away from the prying eyes of the courtiers. The air is cooler here, smelling of damp grass and lavender. Here, the silence was her friend. She could take off the heavy, diamond-encrusted gowns and wear simple muslin. She could be a mother. She could be herself. Close your eyes and listen to the sound of the Petit Trianon. The soft clop, clop of a single horse, the chirping of a cricket in the tall grass, the whisper of the wind through the willow trees by the lake. Marie wanted a world of pastoral peace. She built a tiny farm, a hamlet where she could pretend the world was simple. But the silence of the Trianon was an illusion. Outside the gates, the world was beginning to grow loud with anger. Think of the quiet nights she spent in her private library. The fire is burning low in the grate. She is reading a book, but her mind is wandering. She hears the whispers that are spreading through Paris. The Austrian woman. Madame Deficit. She doesn't understand why they hate her. In her mind, she is just a woman trying to survive the crushing weight of a crown she never asked for. The silence of her library is no longer peaceful. It is becoming the silence of isolation. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine the transition from the palace to the prison. The year is 1789. The world of gold and silk has collapsed. The silence of Versailles is replaced by the harsh, metallic clanging of iron doors in the temple prison. Imagine Marie in her cell. It is small and damp. The walls are bare. The only sound is the heavy breathing of the guards who watch her every move. This was her final exile. A woman who was once the center of the world, now reduced to a number, a prisoner. Think of the silence of her final days. Her hair has turned white from the stress. Her children have been taken away. But in the stillness of the conciergerie, she found a new kind of strength. Not the strength of a queen, but the strength of a martyr. She sat in the dark, writing her final letter to her sister-in-law. The scratch of the pen is slow and deliberate. Scritch, scritch. She forgives her enemies. She prays for her children. She prepares herself for the silence of the grave with a dignity that silenced her critics. Close your eyes and imagine the morning of her execution. The air is cold. The streets of Paris are packed with people, yet for a moment, as she climbs the steps to the scaffold, a strange hush falls over the crowd. She is wearing a simple white dress. She is calm. She steps on the executioner's foot and whispers, "Monsieur, I ask your pardon. I did not do it on purpose." Even in her final moment, she was a creature of grace. The silence that followed was the silence of a world that had changed forever. The monarchy was gone. The era of kings and queens was fading into the crimson mist of the revolution. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the safety of your own space. You are not in a prison. You are not facing a revolution. The tragedy of Versailles is a story from a distant time, a flickering candle in the dark of history. Listen to the stillness of your room. It is a gentle stillness. It holds no perfume, no powdered wigs, no angry crowds. You are drifting away from the hall of mirrors, away from the Petit Trianon and the iron bars of the temple. The fragile angel is at peace now. Her exile is over. You are floating now, like a petal on the lake at Versailles, moving slowly toward the center where the water is deep and dark. The weight of the world is lifting. The weight of the diamonds is gone. Marie Antoinette was buried in a common grave, but she was later moved to the Basilica of Saint Denis to lie among the kings and queens of France. In the end, she found the eternal silence she always sought in the gardens of the Trianon. Breathe in the scent of roses and the peace of the night. Breathe out the noise of your day. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the glittering, tragic halls of France now, preparing to travel back to the ancient mysteries of Egypt, where a scholar queen is weaving her final illusion. But for now, stay here in the quiet. Let the story of the fragile angel guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep. The scent of Versailles roses has finally vanished, carried away by a hot, dry wind that tastes of salt and ancient dust. We are traveling back across the centuries, leaving the guillotine and the revolution behind, crossing the Mediterranean once more, until we reach the lighthouse of Alexandria. The year is 30 BC. The air here is heavy with the smell of papyrus, cedarwood, and the looming end of an era. Welcome to the world of Cleopatra VII. Not just a beauty of legend, but a scholar, a polyglot, and a woman who understood that power is the greatest illusion of all. Envision the palace of Alexandria at dusk. The great library stands nearby, a silent mountain of scrolls and lost wisdom. The harbor is calm, the water of the Mediterranean lapping gently against the stone piers, lap, splash, lap. Inside her private study, the queen is alone. She is surrounded by books in a dozen different languages. For Cleopatra, silence was not a void, it was a laboratory. It was where she calculated the movements of the Roman legions and the movement of the stars. To understand Cleopatra, we must understand the silence of the intellect. While the world remembers her for her love affairs, her real passion was survival through knowledge. Imagine a young girl growing up in a court of poisonings and betrayals, where her own siblings were her greatest enemies. She learned that a sharp mind is more dangerous than a sharp blade. She spoke Greek, Egyptian, Hebrew, and Latin. She didn't just listen to men, she spoke to them in their own tongues, making her silence as strategic as her speech. Let your mind drift into the cool, dark halls of her palace. Feel the texture of the cool marble beneath your feet. Cleopatra's life was a grand performance, but it was a performance designed to keep Egypt free from the iron grip of Rome. Think of her first meeting with Julius Caesar. Not a grand entrance with trumpets, but a quiet, humble arrival, hidden inside a laundry bag. The silence of that moment, as she was unrolled before the most powerful man in the world, was her first great illusion. Take a deep breath and let the stillness of the night settle over you. Envision the queen on her royal barge. The sails are made of purple silk, the oars are tipped with silver, dipping into the water with a rhythmic, hypnotic sound, drip, swirl, drip. The air is thick with the fragrance of burning incense, a scent that announced her arrival long before she spoke. She made herself into a living goddess, a spectacle so vast that it silenced the Roman generals who came to conquer her. Think of the quiet nights she spent with Mark Antony in the gardens of Alexandria. They called themselves the inimitable livers. But beneath the wine and the music, there was a growing silence. The shadow of Octavian was stretching across the sea from Rome. Imagine Cleopatra standing on her balcony, looking out at the Pharos lighthouse. Its light was a beacon for the world, but for her, it was a reminder that her time was flickering out. As you move closer to the heart of sleep, think of the silence of the final act. The Battle of Actium is over. The Roman fleet is closing in. Cleopatra has retreated to her tomb, a massive stone monument filled with her gold, her jewels, and her books. Imagine the atmosphere inside that tomb. It is cool and quiet. The sound of the city outside is muffled, a distant, fading roar. Here, she crafted her final illusion. She knew that she could not win a war of swords, so she chose to win the war of history. Think of her sitting on her golden throne for the last time. She is dressed in her most magnificent robes, the crown of the pharaohs on her head. She has outsmarted the world for 22 years. She will not let Octavian lead her through the streets of Rome in chains. The silence of the tomb is broken only by the soft rustle of her silk sleeves as she reaches for a small, woven basket of figs. Legend whispers of the asp, the serpent of the Nile, hidden among the fruit. A quick, sharp silence, and then, peace. The scholar queen left the world as she lived in it, on her own terms. She turned her death into a mystery that would fascinate the world for 2,000 years. The Roman soldiers found her looking as if she were merely asleep, her dignity intact, her silence absolute. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the safety of your own space. You are far away from the Roman legions. You are far away from the poisons of the ancient court. The Egypt of the Ptolemies is a dream of sand and stone now, a beautiful, fading image. Listen to the stillness of your room. It is a kind stillness. It holds no secret scrolls, no golden thrones, no looming wars. You are drifting away from the harbor of Alexandria, away from the smell of incense and the sound of the silver oars. The Queen of the Nile is at rest now. Her final illusion is complete. You are floating now, like a lotus flower on the surface of a quiet pond, moving slowly, effortlessly, toward a deep, dark sleep. The weight of the world is lifting. The weight of the Library of Alexandria is gone. The history is becoming a soft, rhythmic lullaby. Cleopatra's tomb has never been found. It remains hidden beneath the sands, or perhaps beneath the rising waters of the sea. It is the ultimate silence. A secret kept by the earth itself. Breathe in the ancient wisdom and the peace of the night. Breathe out the tensions of your day. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the sun-scorched palaces of Egypt now, preparing to return to the heart of Versailles, where a different kind of shadow is waiting in the silent corridors. But for now, stay here in the quiet. Let the story of the scholar queen guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The dry heat of Cleopatra's Alexandria is beginning to soften, cooling into a crisp, European evening, where the air is scented with beeswax, damp stone, and the distant, fading perfume of 1,000 courtiers. We are traveling back to the late 17th century, returning to the heart of France, but not to the throne room, nor the grand banquets. Tonight, we are entering the silent corridors of Versailles. A world that existed in the shadows of the Sun King, where life was a slow, rhythmic dance of protocol, and where the most powerful stories were told in the quietest whispers. Envision the palace as a living, breathing creature. It is 3 miles away from Paris, a world unto itself. At midnight, the grand candles have been snuffed out, but the palace never truly sleeps. There is a particular kind of silence here. It is not the silence of the woods, but a constructed silence. A silence of heavy tapestries that muffle footsteps, and long, echoing hallways where every sound is amplified and analyzed. Feel the stillness of the air. It is cool, carrying the weight of centuries of secrets. To understand life in the shadows of Versailles, we must understand the pace of the ritual. Imagine a young lady-in-waiting, perhaps an aristocrat from a distant province, waking up in a small, cramped room on the upper floors. Far above the gilded ceilings of the king's chambers, the rooms are dark, drafty, and quiet. She wakes up before the sun, to a world of gray light and the soft clink, clink of a silver ewer being placed on a wooden table. Her life is not her own. It belongs to the palace. It belongs to the rhythm of the court. Allow your mind to drift down the narrow, hidden staircases. These are the escaliers de robes, the secret stairs where the real history of France was written. While the public world saw the king in his glory, the shadow world saw the exhaustion, the worry, and the human frailty. You can hear the faint, ghostly rustle of wool against stone. Shh, shh, shh. In these corridors, identity was a mask. You learned to keep your face as still as a marble statue, to breathe without making a sound, to see everything and say nothing. Think of the silence of the waiting room. For many at Versailles, life was simply a series of long, motionless hours spent waiting. Waiting for the king to pass by. Waiting for a signature on a document. Waiting for a nod of recognition that might never come. Imagine sitting on a hard, velvet-covered bench for 6 hours, the only sound being the rhythmic ticking of a gilded clock on the mantel. Tick, tick, tick. The silence becomes heavy, almost physical. You watch the dust motes dancing in a single beam of light, moving in slow, circular patterns. You become a master of the inner world, finding sanctuary in your own thoughts because your body is trapped by etiquette. Envision the palace gardens at 3 in the morning. The fountains have been turned off to save water, and the statues of Apollo and Diana stand like frozen guards in the moonlight. The gravel paths are white and cold. Occasionally, a shadow moves among the hedgerows. A secret meeting, a forbidden letter exchanged, a quiet conversation that could change the course of a war. The scent of boxwood and damp earth is strong here. The silence of the garden is a protective cloak. You can hear the distant owl calling from the forest, a reminder that a wilder world exists just beyond the iron gates. Let your body settle deeper into your sanctuary of rest. Feel the immense scale of the building around you. 2,000 windows, 700 rooms. And in every room, someone is wrestling with the silence. Think of the aging courtier who has spent 40 years in these halls. He remembers the palace when it was a hunting lodge, before the gold, before the mirrors. In the quiet of his chambers, he looks at his reflection in a small, clouded mirror. He is a shadow of the man he once was, but he is part of the stone. He is part of the silence. The corridors of Versailles were a forge for the human spirit. You learn to find beauty in the small things. The way the morning light hit a particular piece of blue porcelain. The sound of the wind rattling the heavy, leaded glass panes. The scent of a single orange blossom brought in from the orangery. These were the anchors in a world of shifting political tides. Think of the winter nights at the palace. The marble floors are like ice. The fires in the massive hearths struggle to warm the vast rooms. You wrap yourself in furs and sit by the embers, watching the orange glow fade into gray ash. The silence of a winter night in Versailles is absolute. It is the silence of a kingdom held in suspense. You can hear the ice cracking on the Grand Canal outside, a sharp, sudden sound that echoes through the trees. As you drift closer to the threshold of dreams, think of the thousands of lives that were lived in these shadows. Not the kings and queens, but the musicians, the cooks, the architects, the poets. They are the ones who truly knew the palace. They knew the smell of the kitchens at dawn. They knew the sound of the chapel organ being tuned in the afternoon. They knew the silence of the long galleries when the court had moved to Marly for the summer. Their stories are not in the history books, but they are in the air. They are the silent echoes that follow you through the corridors. Imagine yourself now, walking through the Galerie de Glaces when it is empty. The moonlight is the only lamp. Your reflection moves beside you, a twin made of silver and shadow. You are not hurried. You are not waiting for anyone. You are simply a witness to the passage of time. The weight of the palace is not heavy tonight. It is as light as a dream. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the coolness of the marble in your imagination, but let the warmth of your own bed keep you safe and grounded. You are far away from the intrigues of the 17th century. You are in a place of perfect peace. Listen to the stillness of your own room. It is a kind stillness. It holds no protocols, no secret staircases, no endless waiting. You are drifting away from the corridors of Versailles, away from the scent of beeswax and the rustle of silk. The life in the shadows is fading into the mist of the past. You are floating now, like a ghost through a door, moving effortlessly, silently, into the heart of the night. The weight of history is lifting. The weight of the crown is gone. There is only the soft, rhythmic hum of the universe. The palace remains, a monument of stone and memory, but the silence of the corridors is now yours to keep. It is a silence that brings rest, that brings healing, that brings dreams. Breathe in the elegance of the past and the stillness of the present. Breathe out the noise of the modern world. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the silent halls of France now, preparing to move toward the ancient hearths of a medieval village, where the alchemy of survival is being practiced in the dark. But for now, stay here in the shadows. Let the story of the silent corridors guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The polished marble and silent corridors of Versailles are slowly dissolving, melting into a landscape of rough-hewn timber, flickering hearth fires, and the deep, damp smell of a forest floor after a summer rain. We are traveling back to the 14th century, far away from the palaces of gold, to a small, thatched cottage at the edge of a medieval village. The air here is thick with the scent of drying sage, wood smoke, and the metallic tang of an iron cauldron simmering over a bed of embers. Welcome to the world of the everyday alchemist. Not the men in search of gold, but the women and healers in search of life. This is the alchemy of survival. Envision the interior of this cottage at twilight. The windows are small, covered with oiled parchment that lets in a soft, amber glow. Outside, the world is harsh and unpredictable, but inside, there is a ritual of protection. You can hear the rhythmic thud, thud, thud of a wooden pestle hitting a stone mortar. It is a heartbeat of the home. In this space, every herb hanging from the rafters has a story. Every ritual performed in the dark has a purpose. Silence here is not a luxury, it is a space for concentration, a space where the knowledge of the ancestors is whispered to the boiling water. To understand this medieval world, we must understand the pace of the seasons. Life was not measured by clocks, but by the slow ripening of the wheat and the migration of the birds. Imagine the healer of the village, a woman whose hands are stained with the juices of elderberries and the dust of dried roots. She wakes up when the dew is still heavy on the grass. The world is perfectly still, a silver landscape held in suspense. She moves through the meadow, her feet bare on the cold earth, gathering plants when their virtue is at its peak. She knows that a leaf picked under the moonlight is different from a leaf picked under the sun. This is the first step of her alchemy. Allow your mind to focus on the cauldron in the center of the room. The water is beginning to bubble, a low, rhythmic sound like a distant sea, blub, hiss, blub. Into this water, she drops handfuls of dried hyssop for the breath, willow bark for the pain, and mugwort for the dreams. As the steam rises, it carries the essence of the forest into the room. The steam is warm, wrapping around you like a soft, invisible blanket. It smells of the earth, of things that grow in the dark, of things that endure. Think of the silence of a long winter night. The snow is piled high against the door, sealing the family inside a world of shadow and flame. The only light comes from a rushlight, a simple reed dipped in fat, flickering with a tiny, persistent flame. In this quiet, the alchemy of story begins. The grandmother sits by the fire, her voice a low, melodic drone. She tells tales of the hidden folk, of the spirits that guard the wells, and the rituals needed to keep the household safe. These stories are a remedy for the mind, a way to make sense of a world that feels vast and dangerous. Envision the texture of the remedies. The stickiness of honey used to bind a wound, the roughness of a linen bandage, the cool, soothing feel of a clay poultice. These were not just medicines, they were connections to the physical world. Survival was a tactile art. You had to feel the pulse, smell the breath, watch the color of the skin. In the silence of the sick room, the healer becomes a listener. She listens to the body's internal language, waiting for the rhythm to change, waiting for the fever to break like a summer storm. Let your body settle deeper into the softness of your own rest. Feel the security of being far away from the plagues and the famines of the past. But carry with you the wisdom of that era. The knowledge that everything we need is often right beneath our feet. Think of the medieval garden at midnight. It is a physic garden, a living pharmacy. The moon illuminates the silver leaves of the sage and the pale flowers of the chamomile. The air is perfectly still, but it is alive with the silent growth of the plants. They are busy in the dark, pulling nutrients from the soil, turning water and moonlight into medicine. This is the quietest alchemy of all. The alchemy of the earth itself. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, think of the rituals of the night. The covering of the fire or the curfew. The embers are raked together and covered with a ceramic lid, keeping the heat alive until morning without letting the flames escape. Imagine the sound of the metal lid hitting the stone hearth, a dull, final clunk. This is the signal for sleep. The day's work is done. The survival is secured for one more night. The silence of the cottage is now absolute. Only the occasional pop of a cooling timber breaks the peace. The people of the Middle Ages lived in a world of profound mystery. They believed that the stars influenced the blood, that certain stones could ward off evil, and that a prayer was as necessary as a potion. While we have moved beyond their science, we can still find comfort in their devotion, their commitment to the cycle of life, their understanding that we are part of the landscape, not masters of it. Think of the hundreds of generations of healers who kept this knowledge alive. The silent line of women passing down the secrets of the forest. They are the ones who ensured that humanity endured through the darkest centuries. Their whispers are still in the wind. Their remedies are still in the soil. Imagine yourself now, lying on a bed of fresh straw and lavender in that medieval cottage. The fire is a low, orange glow. The air is cool, but the blankets are heavy and warm. You are safe. You are protected by the rituals of 1,000 years. The world outside is vast and wild, but here, in this small space, there is only the rhythm of your own heart. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the grounding energy of the earth in your imagination, but let the modern comfort of your bed provide your final sanctuary. You are drifting away from the thatched cottage, away from the smell of wood smoke and the bubbling cauldron. The alchemy of survival is a story that has been told, and now it is time for the silence to take over. You are floating now, like a seed on the wind, moving effortlessly, silently, through the dark. The weight of the world is lifting. The weight of the iron cauldron is gone. There is only the soft, rhythmic hum of the ancient world fading into the background. The healers are at rest. The fires have been covered. The remedies have been made. And now, you are invited to join that eternal silence. Breathe in the scent of herbs and the peace of the night. Breathe out the stresses of your own survival. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the medieval hearths now, preparing to move toward the forgotten gardens of an ancient empire, where a dream of greenery is waiting in the dust. But for now, stay here in the warmth of the embers. Let the story of the ancient rituals guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The scent of medieval wood smoke and dried lavender is slowly dissolving, carried away by a warm, dry breeze that tastes of sun-baked brick and ancient river silt. We are traveling back thousands of years, to the heart of Mesopotamia, to the city of Babylon. The air here is heavy with the heat of the desert, but as we move closer to the center of the city, the air begins to change. It becomes cooler, damp, and fragrant with the smell of jasmine, cedar, and rising mist. Welcome to the Lost Gardens. A dream of greenery built in a world of dust. A miracle of engineering created for the love of a homesick queen. Imagine standing at the base of a massive, terraced mountain of stone. But this is not a natural mountain. It is a man-made wonder, rising layer upon layer into the hazy blue sky. From a distance, it looks like a lush forest floating in the air, an emerald jewel set against the golden sand. You can hear the distant, rhythmic sound of water, trickle, splash, flow. Thousands of gallons of water are being lifted from the Euphrates River, rising up through hidden pumps and channels, to feed the thirsty roots of 1,000 trees. This is the pulse of the gardens. A heartbeat made of water and stone. Envision the texture of the bricks beneath your hand. They are cool to the touch, glazed in deep blues and ochre yellows. As you begin to climb the wide, stone stairs, the noise of the bustling city of Babylon begins to fade. The shouting of the merchants, the clatter of chariots, the dust of the streets, they all melt away. You are entering a sanctuary of silence. A silence that is not empty, but filled with the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft hum of life. Every step you take leads you higher, away from the heat, and deeper into the shade. To understand these gardens, we must understand the silence of longing. King Nebuchadnezzar built this place for his queen, Amy Tiz. She had come from the green mountains of Media, and the flat, dusty plains of Babylon were a prison for her spirit. She missed the forests. She missed the mist. She missed the feeling of being surrounded by living, breathing green. So, the king did the impossible. He brought the mountains to the desert. He built a garden that defied the sun, a forest that defied the sand. Allow your body to settle into the cool shadows of a cedar tree. The branches are thick and heavy, casting a deep, protective shade over the mossy ground. You can smell the sharp, clean scent of the wood, mixing with the sweet, intoxicating aroma of blooming lilies. The air is perfectly still, but it is alive with the vibration of growth. You can feel the moisture on your skin, a fine mist that hangs in the air, cooling your senses, calming your mind. This is the alchemy of the desert, turning heat into shade, and dust into life. Think of the silence of the night in Babylon. The moon is a bright, silver disk reflecting in the blue-tiled walls of the Ishtar Gate. Up here, in the high terraces, the stars feel close enough to touch. Imagine the queen walking here alone, her silk robes brushing against the ferns. Shh, shh, shh. She is no longer in the desert. In the dark, among the trees, she is home. The gardens are her sanctuary, a place where she can find the silence she needs to remember who she is. Envision the water cascading down from the highest level. It moves from one terrace to the next in a series of artificial waterfalls and streams. You can hear the sound, a constant, melodic drone that lulls the soul. Rush, gurgle, drip. It is a symphony of hydration. The water is the lifeblood of this dream. Without the constant work of the hidden pumps, without the silent labor of the water carriers, this emerald mountain would return to the dust in a single season. But tonight, the water is flowing. Tonight, the dream is real. Let your mind wander through the different levels of the garden. On one level, there are fruit trees, pomegranates, figs, and dates, their branches heavy with sweet, sun-ripened burdens. On another level, there are exotic flowers brought from the edges of the known world, their petals soft and vibrant, opening in the cool of the evening. On the highest level, there are tall pines and oaks, their roots reaching deep into the stone, creating a forest in the clouds. Every level has its own scent, its own sound, its own silence. Think of the architects who designed this wonder. They had to invent new ways to keep the water from leaking through the stone. They used layers of reeds, and bitumen, and lead, a silent, hidden engineering that allowed the green to thrive. They were the masters of the impossible. They understood that to create a dream, you must build a foundation of absolute reality. Their work was a silent tribute to the power of human imagination, a way to make the earth obey the heart. As you drift closer to the threshold of sleep, think of the gardens as they are now. Lost. Over the centuries, the pumps stopped. The water dried up. The bricks crumbled. The trees withered and returned to the soil. Today, archaeologists search for the exact location, but the gardens remain a ghost in the sand. A dream that refuses to be fully found. Perhaps they were never in one place. Perhaps they exist in every garden we build to find peace. The silence of the lost gardens is the silence of memory. It is the feeling of a place you have never been, but always known. It is the longing for the green, the cool, and the quiet. Imagine yourself now, lying on a bed of soft moss near the highest fountain. The water is misting over you, a gentle, cooling touch. The stars of Babylon are shining overhead, vast and eternal. You are far away from the modern world. You are far away from the noise and the light. You are in the heart of the dream. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the ancient, fertile energy of the river valley in your mind, but let the modern comfort of your bed keep you safe. You are drifting away from the terraces of stone, away from the smell of jasmine and the sound of falling water. The lost gardens are fading back into the golden mist of history. You are floating now, like a leaf on the Euphrates, moving slowly, silently, through the dark. The weight of the world is lifting. The weight of the stone terraces is gone. There is only the soft, rhythmic hum of the desert night. The queen is at rest. The architects are at rest. The water has returned to the river. And now, you are invited to join that eternal silence. Breathe in the ancient greenery and the peace of the night. Breathe out the heat and the dust of your day. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the forgotten gardens of Babylon now, preparing to move toward the great halls of a lost library, where the wisdom of the world is turning into ash and silence. But for now, stay here in the shade of the cedar tree. Let the story of the dream of greenery guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The lush, humid air of the hanging gardens is slowly evaporating, replaced by something drier, something that smells of aged cedar, beeswax, and the unmistakable, sweet scent of thousands of ancient papyrus scrolls. We are traveling back to the shores of Egypt, but we are not going to the pyramids or the tombs. Tonight, we are entering the Great Library of Alexandria. The year is 50 BC. The air here is not heavy with heat, but with the weight of all human knowledge. Welcome to the ultimate sanctuary of the mind. A place where the silence was not just a rule, but a form of worship. Envision yourself standing at the entrance of a massive, marble hall. The ceilings are so high they seem to disappear into the shadows. Outside, the city of Alexandria is a chaotic symphony of shouting merchants, clattering chariots, and the roar of the Mediterranean Sea. But as you step across the threshold, the world falls away. The silence hits you like a soft, physical wave. It is a cool silence, a deep silence, a silence that has been cultivated over centuries. You are standing in the center of the world's memory. To understand this library, we must understand the pace of a scholar's life. Imagine a philosopher waking up in the pre-dawn quiet of the Museum. The world is still blue and gray. He doesn't rush. Everything here moves with the slow, deliberate rhythm of a thought being formed. He walks through the long galleries, his sandaled feet making a soft slap, slap, slap against the polished stone floors. He passes row after row of cedar shelves, each one filled with thousands of scrolls, the books of the ancient world. These are not just objects, they are the voices of the past, waiting in the dark to be heard. Allow your body to settle into the stillness of a reading alcove. The stone is cool against your back. You can hear the faint, rhythmic scratching of a quill against papyrus, scritch, scritch, scritch. Somewhere in the distance, a librarian is unrolling a scroll, the dry paper making a sound like the rustling of autumn leaves, crinkle. Crinkle. This is the music of the library. A symphony of study. In this space, you are surrounded by the minds of Aristotle, Sophocles, and Archimedes. Their ideas are vibrating in the air, a silent dialogue that never ends. Think of the scent of the library. It is the smell of time itself. The earthy aroma of the reeds from the Nile, the sharp tang of the ink made from soot and gum, and the protective oils used to keep the insects away. It is a comforting scent, a grounded scent. As you breathe it in, feel your heartbeat slow down. Feel the tension in your shoulders dissolve into the stone. You are in a place where there are no deadlines, no emergencies, only the infinite pursuit of the truth. Envision the great hall at midnight. The scholars have gone to bed, but the scrolls remain. A single oil lamp flickers at the end of a corridor, casting long, dancing shadows that make the pillars look like giant, ancient gods. The air is perfectly still, held in a state of grace. You can imagine the scrolls breathing in the dark, the wisdom of Egypt, Greece, and Persia intermingling in the silence. This was the dream of the Ptolemies, to gather every word ever written under one roof. It was a dream of total human connection. Let your mind drift to the harbor outside the window. You can see the light from the Pharos lighthouse cutting through the dark. Ships from all over the world are anchored there. By law, every ship that entered Alexandria had to surrender its books. The library's scribes would copy them, keep the originals, and return the copies. Think of the silent labor of those scribes. Hours and hours of meticulous work, their eyes straining in the lamplight, their hands moving in a rhythmic, meditative dance. They were the guardians of the flame, the ones who ensured that a single copy of a poem didn't vanish forever. As you drift closer to the threshold of sleep, think about the fragility of this wisdom. The library was not just stone and marble, it was a living, breathing ecosystem of thought. We think of its destruction as a single, dramatic fire, but history whispers of a slower, quieter loss. A fire during Caesar's war, a riot in the streets, the slow decay of neglect, the shifting of political tides. One by one, the scrolls began to disappear. The silence changed from a silence of study to a silence of emptiness. Imagine the final librarian, standing in an empty hall. The shelves are bare. The scrolls have been burned to heat the baths, or lost to the damp, or carried away by fleeing scholars. The wisdom is turning into ash. The silence of the library is now the silence of a ghost. But even in the ashes, something remains. A fragment of a play, a mathematical formula, a map of the stars. They escaped the fire. They found their way into other libraries, other minds, other centuries. The great library of Alexandria is a dream we still have. A dream of a world where all knowledge is shared. Where silence is respected. Where the mind can find a home. Even though the building is gone, the idea of the library is eternal. It is the sanctuary you are in right now. Feel the weight of the ancient scrolls lifting. The heavy marble pillars are fading into a soft, gray mist. You are far away from the fires of history. You are far away from the loss and the ash. You are in the heart of the knowledge that survived. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the coolness of the Egyptian night air in your imagination, but let the safety of your bed be your final scroll. You are drifting away from the shores of Alexandria. Away from the smell of papyrus and the sound of the scratching quill. The great library is closing its doors for the night, and you are inside, safe, warm, and quiet. You are floating now, like a piece of dust in a beam of moonlight. Moving slowly, silently, through the dark. The weight of the world is lifting. The weight of the 500,000 scrolls is gone. There is only the soft, rhythmic hum of the universe remembering itself. The scholars are at rest. The scribes have put away their pens. The lighthouse has dimmed its flame. And now, you are invited to join that eternal silence. Breathe in the wisdom of the past and the peace of the present. Breathe out the noise of the information age. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the halls of Alexandria now, preparing to move toward the vast, starlit deserts of the Silk Road, where a caravan is moving silently through the midnight sands. But for now, stay here in the library of your dreams. Let the story of the wisdom in ashes guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The scent of ancient papyrus and the cool marble of Alexandria are slowly drifting away, carried off by a vast, dry wind that tastes of salt, spice, and infinite horizons. We are traveling thousands of miles to the east, to the heart of the Silk Road. The year is 800 AD. The sun is beginning its slow, majestic descent behind the jagged peaks of the Hindu Kush. The sky is no longer blue, it is a deep, bruised violet, streaked with veins of burning orange and dusty gold. Welcome to the caravan. A world in motion, yet tonight, a world finding its way to a profound, desert silence. Envision yourself standing on the crest of a high, shifting sand dune. Below you, the great Silk Road stretches out like a golden ribbon, disappearing into the hazy distance. You can see a caravan approaching its resting place for the night. It is a long, rhythmic line of camels, their silhouettes dark against the setting sun. You can hear the sound of the desert. It is not a void. It is a symphony of small things. The soft thump, thump, thump of padded camel feet on the sand. The rhythmic, metallic clink, chime, clink of the bells hanging from their harnesses. This is the pulse of the Silk Road. A sound that has remained unchanged for 1,000 years. Allow your mind to descend into the valley where the caravan is stopping. The air is cooling rapidly now. The heat of the day is radiating off the sand, a warm breath that slowly turns into a crisp evening chill. There is a particular kind of silence here. It is the silence of the vastness. A silence that makes you feel small, but also part of something eternal. You are standing in a place where millions of travelers have stood before you, merchants from Chang'an, monks from India, weavers from Persia. They all shared this moment. The moment when the journey stops, and the rest begins. Think of the ritual of making camp. It is a slow, methodical process. The camels are knelt down, their heavy sighs echoing in the twilight, huff, groan, silence. The heavy bales of silk, the crates of spices, the jars of tea, they are all unloaded with care. You can smell the cargo. It is an intoxicating mixture. The sharp, dry scent of raw silk, the sweet, heavy aroma of cinnamon and cloves, and the earthy, bitter smell of loose-leaf tea. As the packages are opened, the essence of a whole continent fills the air. It is a fragrance of adventure, now settling into a fragrance of peace. Envision the first campfire being lit. The wood is dry, gathered from the scrub brush along the trail. You hear the sound of the flint striking stone, click, click, spark. And then, the first tiny flame catches. It grows into a warm, orange glow that pushes back the gathering shadows. You sit down by the fire, the warmth seeping into your tired muscles. You watch the smoke rise in a straight, thin line toward the stars. The fire is the heart of the camp. It is a sanctuary of light in a world of darkness. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the stillness of the desert evening. In this space, time begins to stretch. The worries of the day, the fear of bandits, the heat of the sun, the thirst, they all evaporate like mist. There is only the fire, the sand, and the stars. You hear the sound of a kettle beginning to boil over the flames, a low, steady hiss that becomes a melodic hum. Hiss, bubble, hiss. A merchant pours tea into a small, clay bowl, the liquid steaming in the cool air. This is the simplest of pleasures. A warm drink, a quiet fire, and a safe place to rest. Think of the stories told around these fires. The Silk Road was not just a path for goods, it was a path for ideas. Imagine a traveler from the West sharing a story with a traveler from the East. They don't speak the same language, but they speak the language of the road. They use gestures and drawings in the sand and the shared silence of understanding. They talk of the Great Wall, of the blue tiles of Samarkand, of the high, snowy passes where the air is too thin to breathe. Their voices are a low murmur, blending with the crackle of the wood, pop, snap, crackle. Envision the desert night as it truly takes hold. The fire has burned down to a bed of glowing, ruby embers. The sky above is a masterpiece of light. Without the glare of cities, the stars are brilliant, dense, and overwhelming. The Milky Way is a river of silver dust flowing across the heavens. You lie back on a pile of soft carpets, the wool thick and comforting against your back. You look up, and you feel the rotation of the earth. A slow, silent movement that carries you through the universe. To understand the Silk Road, you must understand the silence of the caravan. It is a silence of shared purpose. Everyone here is a stranger, yet everyone is a brother. They are all moving toward a distant goal, but for tonight, the goal is simply sleep. You hear the camels shifting in the dark, the soft jingle of a bell as one of them moves its head. Tinkle, silence, tinkle. It is a reassuring sound. It means you are not alone. Let your body settle deeper into the carpets. Feel the immense weight of the desert around you. Millions of square miles of sand, rock, and silence. But in this small circle of fading firelight, you are protected. You are warm. You are at rest. Think of the thousands of years this road has existed. The empires that rose and fell along its path. The cities that turned to dust. But the road remains. The stars remain. And the need for rest remains. You are part of that long, silent tradition. A traveler at the end of a long day. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, think of the silence of the dawn that will eventually come. The gray light, the cold air, the packing of the camels. But that is a lifetime away. For now, there is only the night. The embers are fading now, turning from orange to gray. The smoke has disappeared. The desert is reclaiming its absolute stillness. You are floating now, like a grain of sand carried by a gentle breeze. Moving slowly, effortlessly, over the dunes. The weight of the world is lifting. The weight of the silk bales is gone. The journey is paused. There is only the soft, rhythmic hum of the stars. The merchants are asleep. The camels are dreaming. The fire is out. And now, you are invited to join that eternal silence. Breathe in the scent of the desert and the peace of the night. Breathe out the distance you have traveled today. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the starlit sands of the Silk Road now, preparing to move toward the high, stone arches of a great cathedral, where the silence is carved in stone and light. But for now, stay here in the cool desert air. Let the story of the caravan and the campfire guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The vast, starlit sands of the Silk Road are beginning to fade, the warmth of the caravan fire cooling into a different kind of stillness. We are traveling to the heart of medieval Europe, to the year 1250. We are standing before the heavy, oak doors of a great Gothic cathedral. The air here is not dry and dusty, it is cool, damp, and heavily scented with centuries of incense and cold stone. Welcome to the cathedral's echo. A world where the silence is carved into the very arches, and where the light itself seems to move with a slow, sacred rhythm. Envision yourself pushing open those massive doors. They move with a low, weighted groan, creak, thud. As you step inside, the world of the street, the shouting of the market, the clatter of carts, the mud and the noise, all of it vanishes in an instant. You are standing at the base of a forest of stone. Massive pillars rise up like giant, gray trees, reaching hundreds of feet into the gloom of the vaulted ceiling. There is a particular kind of silence here. It is a vertical silence. A silence that draws your eyes upward, away from the earth, and toward the infinite. Allow your mind to adjust to the dim, colorful light. It is a dim religious light, as the poets say. The sun is shining through the great rose window, but the light that reaches you is no longer white. It is a kaleidoscope of deep ruby reds, sapphire blues, and emerald greens. The light moves across the stone floor in slow, silent pools of color. You watch a beam of violet light settle on a carved gargoyle, then move on, inch by inch, as the sun travels across the sky. This is the clock of the cathedral. A clock made of light and shadow. Think of the sound of your own footsteps. On the polished flagstones, every step creates an echo. Click, echo, click, echo. The sound travels up the pillars, bounces off the ribbed vaults, and lingers in the air like a ghostly memory. It is a reminder of how small we are in the face of such grandeur. You find a wooden pew, worn smooth by the hands of thousands of pilgrims who sat here before you. You sit down, and the wood creaks softly under your weight, creak, silence. You are now part of the cathedral's stillness. To understand this space, we must understand the silence of the stonemasons. Imagine the men who built this place. They spent their entire lives carving a single pillar, or a single saint's face, knowing they would never see the finished building. Theirs was a silent devotion. They left their marks in the stone, tiny, hidden symbols that only another mason would recognize. Think of the rhythmic clink, clink, clink of the chisel against the limestone. A sound that echoed through the years, slowly, patiently, turning raw rock into a prayer. Envision the atmosphere of the choir stalls. The wood is dark oak, intricately carved with vines, lions, and angels. In the early morning, before the first Mass, the silence here is absolute. Then, the first note of a Gregorian chant rises from the shadows. It is a single, unaccompanied voice, a low, resonant hum that seems to emerge from the stone itself. The chant is slow, circular, and hypnotic. Kyrie, eleison. The words don't matter as much as the vibration. It fills the vast space, vibrating in your chest, calming your nervous system, aligning your breath with the architecture. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the coolness of the cathedral air. It is an ancient air, trapped within these walls for 700 years. It carries the scent of beeswax candles, thousands of them, burning down to nothing over the centuries. You can see a few candles flickering now in a dark side chapel. Their flames are small, golden hearts pulsing in the dark. Flicker, pulse, flicker. They are the silent representatives of the people's hopes and fears. Each one a tiny light against the vastness of the shadows. Let your body settle deeper into the pew. Feel the immense strength of the arches above you. They are designed to distribute the weight of the roof, but they also feel as if they are holding up the sky. You are in a sanctuary, a place where the rules of the outside world do not apply. Here, there is no time, no hurry, no anxiety. There is only the presence of the stone. The stone is patient. The stone is eternal. Think of the silence of the cathedral at midnight. The moon is shining through the stained glass, casting ghostly, silver shapes on the floor. The statues of the saints and kings seem to come alive in the half-light. They stand in their niches, watching the empty nave with unblinking eyes. You can hear the wind howling around the flying buttresses outside, a high, lonely whistling sound. But inside, the air is perfectly still. Not a candle flickers. Not a shadow moves. As you drift closer to the threshold of sleep, think of the cathedral as a giant instrument. When the wind blows, the building hums. When the bells toll in the high tower, the vibration travels down through the stone and into the earth. Imagine the sound of the great bell. Bong, bong, bong. A deep, bronze vibration that shakes the air, then slowly, very slowly, fades into a hum, then a whisper, then silence. The cathedral's echo is the echo of history itself. It is the sound of 1,000 years of prayers, of music, and of silence. It is a space designed to help you forget yourself, to help you merge with the infinite. You are floating now, like a mote of dust in a beam of colored light, moving slowly, silently, through the vast, dark nave. The weight of the world is lifting. The weight of the stone arches is gone. There is only the soft, rhythmic hum of the chant fading into the background. The masons are at rest. The monks have finished their prayers. The candles have burnt out. And now, you are invited to join that eternal silence. Breathe in the cool, sacred air and the peace of the night. Breathe out the noise of the marketplace. You are safe. You are quiet. You are at peace. We leave the stone arches of the cathedral now, preparing to move toward the final sunset, where the history of the world becomes a soft, universal reflection. But for now, stay here in the shadows of the choir stalls. Let the story of the silence and stone guide you into a deep, heavy, and restorative sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The echoes of the great cathedral are slowly receding, the scent of cold stone and incense drifting away into a vast, open sky. We have traveled through time, through palaces of gold and cells of damp stone. We have walked the burning sands of the Silk Road and the lush terraces of Babylon. Now, we arrive at our final destination. Not a place on a map, but a moment of universal reflection. The final sunset. Imagine yourself standing on a high, grassy cliff overlooking a boundless ocean. The sun is a massive, crimson sphere, half submerged in the water, casting a bridge of shimmering light across the waves. Here, the silence is absolute. It is the silence of history looking back at itself. Envision the light as it changes from gold to deep violet. In this fading light, the faces of the queens and kings we've met tonight seem to appear in the clouds for one last time. We see Mary Tudor in her lonely corridors, Joanna in her midnight procession, Zetian on her dragon throne, and Marie Antoinette in her gilded cage. As the stars begin to emerge, one by one, we realize that their stories are not just tales of the past. They are mirrors. To understand the weight of these 3 hours, we must look at the lesson hidden in the shadows. We have seen that power, no matter how grand, is as fleeting as the mist on a summer morning. The palaces crumble, the gold fades, and the crowns are eventually reclaimed by the earth. But what remains? What is the educational truth we take with us into our sleep? It is the resilience of the human spirit. Throughout these 20 stories, we have learned that the true strength of a person is not found in the loudness of their command, but in the depth of their silence. We saw it in Eleanor of Aquitaine's 15 years of patience. We saw it in Cleopatra's intellectual sanctuary. We saw it in the village healer's alchemy of survival. The lesson is this: external power is often a cage, but internal peace is a fortress that no revolution can tear down. Let your body settle into the deepest level of rest now. Feel the gravity of the earth supporting you, steady and unchanging. Think of the billions of souls who have watched this same sunset throughout history. Regardless of their status, whether they were emperors or peasants, they all sought the same thing at the end of the day: peace, shelter, and the grace of a quiet mind. As the sun disappears completely and the moon takes its place, we reflect on the cycle of life. History is not a straight line of progress, but a circle of seasons. There is a time for the rising of the sun and a time for its setting. There is a time for the building of empires and a time for the silence of the ruins. By understanding this, we learn to hold our own worries more lightly. If the great queens of the past could endure their storms, then we, too, can find the strength to navigate our own quiet lives. Envision the dark water of the ocean below. It is rhythmic and eternal. Hush, wash, hush. The water remembers the ships of the Silk Road and the barges of the Nile. It tells us that we are all connected by the same human experience. Our struggles, our loves, and our silences are part of a grand, universal tapestry. This knowledge is a remedy for the soul. It reminds us that we are never truly alone in the dark. As you drift into the final minutes of this journey, think of your own life as a story yet to be fully written. What will be your legacy? It won't be the things you owned or the titles you held. It will be the quiet moments of kindness, the patience you showed in difficult times, and the peace you cultivated within yourself. This is the true alchemy we have discovered tonight. The power to turn the lead of daily stress into the gold of wisdom. Take a slow, deep breath, the deepest of the night. Feel the air filling your lungs, then leaving you in a perfect state of release. The 3-hour walk through the corridors of time is over. The candles are all out. The scrolls are rolled up. The cathedral doors are locked. You have reached the end of the road, and the beginning of a deep, restorative dream. Listen to the final vibration of the universe. It is a low, soothing hum, the sound of the world at rest. There are no more queens to follow. No more battles to fight. No more secrets to uncover. There is only you and the vast, kind silence of the night. You are floating now, beyond the reach of history, beyond the reach of time. You are a star in the night sky, steady, bright, and perfectly still. The weight of the world is completely gone. You are free. You are safe. You are home. The final sunset has faded into 1,000,000 stars. The history of power has become the wisdom of peace. And now, the story is finished. The rest is yours. Breathe in the legacy of the past and the stillness of the future. Breathe out everything that no longer serves you. You are ready. You are quiet. You are at peace. Good night, traveler. The journey is complete. Sleep, sleep, sleep.